Hey guys, welcome to Geekly EDU. This is me, Sona Singh, and today we are going to talk about the structure of DNA. Quite to your surprise, it took around 60 years for it to be established. So this guy is Miescher. Now Miescher was examining the pus, the fluid that comes out of the blood after the clot. So he said, well, there's a substance called nuclein, and maybe this has to do with genetic material, and that is because in those days there was this popular theory that whatever is the genetic material that goes around in our body fluids, and it was around the same time that Mendel had discovered the principles of heredity, right? So he was experimenting with peas, and then he had the three laws. And well, even Mendel thought that something is in our fluids transfer the characters, right? Nevertheless, what was nuclein was not exactly known to Miescher, or neither Mendel exactly had a physical basis. He did not know what was it. Then came this guy called Thomas Hunt Morgan, who was working with fruit flies, Drosophila. Now, he established that using the eye colors in Drosophila, that, well, it is the chromosomes, which is the physical basis of inheritance. But the problem, was, well, chromosomes are made up of DNA and protein. Which is it? Right? Is DNA the genetic material, and or is it the protein? Now the thing was, DNA was known to have like four different kinds of bases. And protein, well, 20 different amino acids. So, well, 26 alphabets make for a better language, right? As You Like It by Shakespeare, or the famous novels, everything is written there, much more suitable to carry information if you say proteins. But four bases, that doesn't sound like a language to you, right? Well, then came another scientist called Frederick Griffith. He's known for his transformation principle. Well, he had this, he was crazy about mice, not exactly, but yeah. So, well, he was experimenting with this bacteria called Streptococcus pneumoniae, which causes pneumonia. And, well, if infected, the rat, the mouse, dies. Now, so he found out that there's like two strains of this bacteria called 3S and 2R. Now, what's the difference? S stands for smooth. That means these appear smooth when you see them under the microscope, and rough appears rough. That's all because of a coating on their surface, which obviously has a genetic basis. But he did not know that. So what he found out, well, that this 3S bacteria could kill a mouse. So if you infect this mouse with 3S and you infect another mouse with a 2R, the 3S guy died. And with his dead body, he could recover the 3S bacteria. So somehow the 3S bacteria took over, succeeded. But the 2R, well, he lived and there was no bacteria found in the blood. So he was like, okay, 3S is the bad guy, 2R is a good guy, big deal. Now he said, let's heat kill 3S. Heat kill means, just subject it to boiling or heating. Heat will kill the proteins or DNA, whatever it is, right? But that's the thing, it will kill both of them, right? So when he gets the heat kill bacteria inside the rat or mouse, it survives. Now what he did was he added a 2R and a 3S heat kill bacteria mixture. The rat, the mouse again died, and the 3S bacteria were recovered. So he said that somehow this 2R was transformed, but he could not conclude. I mean, heat could destroy both of the things, right? So, what transformed this 2R bacteria to become 3S, he did not know. He had no idea. So, to solve this problem, the puzzle, there came three other different scientists, Avery, McLeod, and McCarthy. These three scientists came up with a very crafty solution. So, they knew that heat kill 3S plus 2R combination will kill the mouse. He knew that all. They knew that already. So in order to decide what exactly in 3S is genetic material, they treated the filtrate. They filtered the 3S contents and they separated it into three different test tubes. And in one of the test tubes, they added an enzyme called RNase. In another one, a DNase. In third one, a protease. RNase is an RNA digesting enzyme. DNase digests DNA, and protease, well, the name says it all, digest protein. And as it happens that when a DNase was used, there was no death. So DNA looks like to be the genetic material. right? So this looks like, well, bingo, problem solved. But well, the scientists were not still yielding. They did not believe them. Well, they were like, no, this doesn't sound right. So then came Hershey and Chase, and they were like, let's find a very solid way to distinguish protein and DNA. And they said that proteins do have sulfur, DNA does not. So they use radioactive isotopes of sulfur and phosphate. So sulfur's radioactive isotope is S35, for phosphorus is P32. So they fed the E. coli with sulfur 35 and P32, two different cultures, and then grew the T2 bacteriophages. Bacteriophages, they infect bacteria, right? So they created two types of T2 bacteriophages, one which had sulfur 35, another which had phosphorus 32. Then they infected two different populations of E. coli, none of them which were originally radioactive, with T2, P32, and S35. So, well, whatever is genetic material, because we know that only genetic material is passed. So, whatever is genetic material, that will be passed down. So, what we do, we centrifuge both of the cultures, and DNA being heavier, it settles down. But the protein codes left by the viruses, they will be in the supernatant. So where do you find the radioactivity? The so what we found, that the DNA pellet, that is what settled down, right? And it is a genetic material that is passed on, right? So because it was the genetic material that was passed on, that is how we concluded that, well, it is the virus, it is a DNA that's the genetic material, not the protein. Now, Erwin Chargeff, there came another guy. He was one to analyze a lot of DNA molecules, and he said that, well, there's A plus T ratio and G plus C ratio is supposed to be special and is fixed for a certain species. That's called GC ratio. So he sort of gave the idea that DNA have equal amounts of A and T and G and C. So A equals T, G equals C. So then came another person, Rosalind Franklin and Morris Wilkins. They used X-rays. That was their main deal. They use X-ray diffraction to study the structure of DNA. So they came up with this figure, but actually they could not understand it well, right? Now this is where everything gets lucky. Watson and Crick, they happened to build on decades of research. They went for Chargeff's research, Rosalind Franklin's research. They went on, uh, you know, Avery McLeod McCarthy, and they said, well, the DNA looks like helical. And there's complementarity. There has to be two strands, and complementarity could explain why Erwin Charger found that A equals T and G equals C. So, if that's a DNA thread, and if you look at it, you'll find two strands which are wound around a common axis. Now, make no mistake, they're wound around a common axis, not around each other. Okay, very important. Now, if you take a piece of one strand, they are made up of smaller units called deoxyribonucleotides. What is a deoxyribonucleotide? It is a phosphate plus a nucleoside. What's a nucleoside? A nucleoside is the sugar deoxyribose and a nitrogenous base. Now, as it happens, the four bases that we are talking about, that is what makes one deoxyribonucleotide different from the other. Adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine. These are the four nitrogenous bases that you have. Now, you need not remember the structure, but we'll come there. So these are two strands, strands 1 and 2. The circles that you see, those are the phosphates. Phosphates are always on the outside. Then the green pentagons, they are the deoxyribose, and the lines that you see, those are the bases. So the sugar and phosphate form the backbone, and the nitrogenous bases, they form the ladders. So that is how it happens. Now, very importantly, you have to understand a little bit about the bonds. So the sugar is bound to the nitrogenous base, right, on the first carbon, right? And on the fifth carbon, you have a phosphate attached. So that is why the DNA is said to have a 5' end. 5' because the phosphate binds to the fifth carbon of the deoxyribose sugar. Then it's said to have a 3' end as well, because on the third carbon of the deoxyribose sugar, you have the OH hanging. So we say the DNA strands are directional, there's directionality, and they are anti-parallel because the 5 and 3, they are just opposite. Now, ester bond links phosphate to the sugar on both sides. So we have two ester bonds linking two deoxyribonucleotides. Hence, you say deoxyribonucleotides are linked by phosphodiester bond. Then you have a glycosidic bond between the sugar and the base, and you have hydrogen bonds between the bases. So the two strands are kept together by hydrogen bonds. Now, this is very, very important. You'll understand this later in biotechnology lectures. Now, A always pairs with T using a double hydrogen bond, and G pairs with C using a triple hydrogen bond, as you can see here, right? And these are the four bases. Adenine and guanine, they are purines because they have two rings, a 6 carbon ring and a 5 carbon ring. Now you sort of need to remember that they have these six rings, 6 and 5 rings. Cytosine and thymine, they are single rings. They are pyrimidines. That's a chemical difference between them. Okay, so by the way, this has been bought from National Human Genome or laboratories. Now, can DNA be of types? So yes, there are three types of DNA because they have three different types of secondary structure. So Watson and Crick were largely talking about the B type of DNA, which is found in the aqueous environment in living systems usually. Now, what do we need to know about this B type of DNA, which is the type of DNA that makes us us? So, you need to know about a few physical characteristics. First of all, there's a major groove and a minor groove. Major groove is where it takes one complete turn. Minor groove is just a depression between the two strands. Now, what's the width of the DNA and what's the pitch of the DNA? So, between the two bases, you have 0.34 nanometers, and the width is 0.2 nanometers, and because between one complete turn you have 10 bases, so you have 3.4 nanometers. A type is shorter and wider, whereas Z is a little bit zigzag in position. Now, these are the the structures that we sort of try to understand these differences in the DNA. But remember, it is a B type of DNA that actually matters to us. Now, you also need to understand that DNA goes to mRNA. That means DNA is read and created into an mRNA, and then that goes into a protein. While DNA has four bases, A, T, G, A, C, mRNA or simply RNA does not have a T. They have a U instead. That's again important. So it's important. Now DNA always have doubles is are only always double stranded. RNA could be single stranded as well. DNA has a deoxyribose sugar, whereas RNA has a ribose sugar. So let's say we have a sequence AAT, GGCCA. If you want to convert it into an RNA, you'll have A going to T, but since RNA cannot have T, have U. Here is a question I want you to work on. It's based on everything that we discussed right in this lecture. And we'll discuss this problem and more problems in another lecture. If you want to talk about genes, there is another video on it. I'll leave the link down below for the gene video so that you can understand them as well. Try this further.
We hope this video was helpful. To see more biology topics covered, click on our channel and don't forget to subscribe.